Biggest winners and losers from week 5. Next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Adam Azer, and we're here to recap week 5 of the NFL season. If you want a full recap, make sure you listen to the full episode of Fantasy Football Today that Adam just hosted with Dave Richard and Heath Cummings. They went through every game on the schedule. They got all kinds of talking points, but there are a few things we want to get to in our brief time here. And the first is couple of significant, well, potentially significant injuries coming out of Sunday's action. Justin Jefferson left Sunday's game with a hamstring injury, left in the fourth quarter, could not return. And obviously, you know, anytime we think about a hamstring injury now, especially for a wide receiver, we're going to think about Cooper Kupp and the timeline that he had and the way that turned into, well, it was only going to be a couple weeks, ended up being 2 months. There's no reason to think it will be that, but it's just to say that initial diagnoses for hamstring injuries are often not necessarily misleading. It's just they're tricky injuries, and you got to let them heal 100%. If you push it, you can end up missing a lot more time. So that's the concern here with Justin Jefferson, that, you know, if he tries to rush back, there could be a lingering issue here. And then the other one would be Anthony Richardson with what the Colts believe is a sprained AC joint. Now, with Jefferson, it's sort of straightforward. If he plays, no matter what, you're starting him next week. If he doesn't, I would think Jordan Addison gets a little bit of a bump, and KJ Osborne obviously moves up the hierarchy as well. But I think we've just seen enough from KJ Osborne to know that he's a wide receiver 4, even if Justin Jefferson's out, right?
He's got this ability to score touchdowns, though. Actually, so the stat I gave it on the main show, the long show, and it was actually wrong. He had in his career 14 games with 7 or more targets. He got a touchdown in 9 of them. He had 76 yards or a touchdown in 11 of them. So he's been pretty good when he's gotten targets. This actually was a game, though, where that actually didn't hold up. He had 5 catches, 49 yards on 9 targets. But if you tell me he's going to get 7 or more targets, I think we're talking about, you know, like a Josh Reynolds this week, where a guy that you can start if you're in a pinch. Only 2 teams on bye next week. But if it's an extended absence, I think Osborne should be picked up. I think the real question is going to be, what do you do with Kirk Cousins? I'm definitely less enthusiastic about starting him, but I still think he could cobble together a low 20 fantasy point game most weeks. And they have Chicago next week, which is the dream matchup.
Yeah, still going to start him. Probably still going to throw a bunch in that game, although, you know, obviously if they beat Chicago soundly, he may not. But the one I do want to talk about is Anthony Richardson. And it's just, I do have a little bit of concern now that he's left 3 of his first 5 career games with injuries. Not that, like, he can't stay healthy or anything, because it's too early to say that. It's just, do the Colts change how they use him? It's such a fine line between keeping a guy safe and not using what makes them so special. And in Richardson's case, it's obvious his rushing production. So that's my concern moving forward, where if he was my number 1 QB for fantasy, I probably do want to make sure I have a very good backup, or at least a backup I feel comfortable with, even if it's someone, you know, who you won't maybe want to start every week, but has upside if you need him, like a Sam Howell, who had a big game this week. Let's move on to some of the winners and losers here. And I want to talk about DeAndre Hopkins, who had his big breakout game of the season, 140 yards on 8 catches. Again, second, maybe we need to get him like some bionic hands, just like extend his fingertips just a little bit, because this is at least 2 weeks in a row that he has been like an inch and a half away from scoring a touchdown. This time it was Derrick Henry slightly overthrew him, which I guess you can kind of understand and excuse. But yeah, DeAndre Hopkins, he's been earning targets at a very high rate all season. The one exception was when he was dealing with that ankle injury. 11 targets in this one, target rate up to 29%. I think he's probably a must-start wide receiver moving forward. Obviously not the number 1 guy he used to be, but still someone who's probably in my lineup more often than not. Adam, who's a winner for you?
You think you got to go with Joe Burrow. I mean, he got his groove back. You had pointed out how bad he was throwing the ball downfield. He made some beautiful throws downfield. Jamar Chase somehow outscores DJ Moore with 52 PPR fantasy points this week. I think it's a great sign. He's got Seattle in week 6, and I think he's a no-brainer must start, and then a bye week. And if he's coming off 2 straight great performances, which is the hope, then you're just starting him rest of season. I mean, a week after the bye week, it's San Francisco, but I'm so encouraged by what we saw with Joe Burrow. Maybe he was telling the truth that he really did feel the best he's felt after a game. after the week 4 game. So that's the clear winner for me is the Bengals offense ticking up with Joe Burrow, hopefully back to being himself.
Yeah, this is what I wrote in my week 5 QB rankings piece. I do believe we'll see Burrow play at a high level at some point this season, but I'm not expecting it in week 5, and I want to stay as far away as I can.
Me too.
I guess half credit maybe, but no, that one looks like a pretty big L. Who's your biggest loser for this week?
I wouldn't say biggest loser, but just maybe a non-obvious loser to me is Jonathan Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
So you could recall, let's say, when Dalvin Cook would get hurt, no matter how well Alexander Mattison would play, Dalvin Cook would come back and get his same role. No change. I don't know how you can take Zach Moss completely off the field at this point. Not just today. He's obviously having a phenomenal season so far. And he's not just some retread, once upon a time, there was some hope that he was going to be a good player. We never really saw it, but he's just been great. So I never had a thought that Taylor wouldn't come all the way back to being the main guy with basically no competition. That thought is in my head now. So I still expect him to be the best back on the team. I still expect him to be a must start, but maybe not with as much upside as we thought before, because I don't know how you don't give Zach Moss something.
The one thing I would say in regards to that is in 2021, Jonathan Taylor was the number 1 running back in fantasy. The other running backs on the Colts combined for 153 touches. Now, that's not quite 10 touches per game, but it's pretty close. So, I do think like there could be room for Zach Moss to get 10 to 12 touches per game, for Taylor to get 18 to 22 and still be very good given, what Shane Steichen wants to do with his offense. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm working on my winners and losers column for week 5 right now. And I think Zach Moss is going to have a role moving forward. My loser for this week is definitely Miles Sanders, who, last week I wrote it off a little bit as, him not being 100% healthy, splitting touches with Chuba Hubbard. Well, this week he was, he fully practiced on Friday. He wasn't on the injury report. He was the lead back through the first quarter, played, I think, 17 of the first 22 snaps. Then he fumbled, and he played like 25% of the snaps the rest of the way. Now, that doesn't mean Miles Sanders is just in the doghouse forever, but given how unimpressive he's been, I think this is probably going to be a timeshare. It's a bad offense. Neither running back looks particularly good in this offense right now. I think it's probably just a stay away situation. If you want to go add Chuba Hubbard, he's, I think, 60% roster in CBS fantasy leagues. Go for it. I think it's pretty unlikely there's any point where we're excited about starting Chuba Hubbard. So I'm not particularly looking forward to that, but he's a running back who seems likely to get touches. So I guess that works. But yeah, Sanders, I was hopeful that he could have some top 15 upside this season. That's pretty much done. I think he's just in a timeshare moving forward. And that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll see you tomorrow.